Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Viking Academy podcast. This week, we have my good friend, André Brisson. Now, André is an engineer, but he's a recovered engineer, just like I'm a recovered accountant. He has started up what's known as the Impulsive Thinker. Now, this is a program for ADHD entrepreneurs. He's got a podcast, he's got a program, but here's the thing that I wanted to explore with him is how he found ADHD in his adult life, and what are the signs that you may have ADHD? Number two, how can you find out if you do have it and get diagnosed properly? And number three, and this is the most important one, is how he has used all of the exploration that he's done on this subject and implementation of it to work with his ADHD, not against it, so that he can actually be more of himself. And he brings his passion and his purpose to this podcast. He's a great guy. We get along great. There's a few F-bombs. So for those with your delicate ears, don't listen to this episode because you're going to hear a little bit of, shall we call it, racy conversation. But there you go. So without further ado, let's go explore. Welcome to the podcast, André.
Great to be here, dude.
For anyone who's not watching the video, we were just basically giving each other the number one sign with the middle finger just before we started the podcast. So that's why we're kind of in chuckle mode as we're starting.
Just read between the lines, brother.
Read between the lines. I've been really looking forward to having you on the podcast, André, because I wanted to expose the listeners to your journey and what you found for yourself. We're going to talk about the passions. We're going to talk about finding what drives you internally, but all it kind of wrapped around in the blanket of figuring out the fact that you had ADHD, which you never realized, and you've actually now created a whole new business out of that. And I'm really excited about that. And I 100% think that's what you should focus your attention on completely, because it's your jam, man.
Yeah, you've been telling me for a couple of years now, and I'm not listening.
Yeah, I know. I keep telling you. Just again. Well, it's kind of like with me in the Viking Academy. I started the Viking Academy up, and this is something that I should have done a long time ago. But now it's here, and we're doing it. And you're doing the ADHD too. So give the listeners a little background on who you are and what we're talking about here in terms of the ADHD.
So my name is André Brisson. I'm the Impulsive Thinker. I'm using the term that you use. I'm a recovering professional engineer. So
recovering engineer. Yeah.
I'm a non-traditionalist engineer in the traditional world. I have an engineering company. And at 44, I was diagnosed with severe ADHD and mild autism. And just a lot of clarity came around that. And I researched the hell out of it, like I normally do, simplified it down, and now I'm helping other ADHD entrepreneurs just understand it's a brain thing, and we're not wired for today's world. So how do we navigate that? And I provide them a vocabulary to explain how they work they're normal, and it's acceptable, and that's the best way to work, and get your ADHD strengths all packaged up with your non-ADHD strengths. Understand your value, and then take over the world your way.
There's a couple tracks I want to go down with you. First one, I would just want to highlight, again, I've been having more and more of these conversations with business owners and people in the traditional professions, the heavy professions that are starting to break away from them and going to these transformational spaces. So Walt Hampton was a criminal lawyer, now turned interfaith minister. Tammy Grantham, she was a nurse, and then she's like, does my soul sessions. Like, she's my angel. Sessions with me. I had Michelle Madrid on the podcast. She was a TV show host, a TV show reporter, and now she's helping women adoptees find their voice again. And yourself, and myself from the accounting world to the Viking Academy, there's this trend that's happening here. Have you seen that as well?
not till you mention it, but yeah, all the examples are coming up in my head. Yeah, and I'm all about understanding the uniqueness of the person or the situation, and that's my talent. But I think, yeah, it is definitely no. You really caught me aside there because that's I never saw that pattern till now, and you're right. And it's more transformational. These people you're referring to, they're looking for transformational work and working with transformational people, not just transactional. I think that's the biggest difference. I think is, I know for you and me, we've been talking about this for a while. We only work with specific people who are ready to do something and want to put in the work. And we're not, well, I won't speak for you, but I'm not for everyone.
Well, I'm
But at the
definitely not
same
for
time,
everyone. You already
yeah,
know that. You're
yeah. And most times you're not for me either, but that's another episode. But yeah, it's transformational is the right people who wants to get a better understanding of themselves is on the rise. Not necessarily on the rise. I'm trying to put this into proper words, so my brain's going all over the place on that. So, what was your point on that observation then?
Well, what I'm seeing is there's more and more people moving from what they traditionally trained for,
Yeah,
these
yeah,
harder kind of solid, call it heavy three-dimensional spaces, call it accounting, lawyer, engineer, like we nailed
yeah,
off those. And now we have those three are moving away from that into more transformational spaces, but very, very niche spaces. Like I'm in the Viking mindset,
yeah,
explorer mindset. And then Michelle Madrid was dealing with female adoptees, and you deal with the ADHD entrepreneur. Like
yeah.
they're very niche, but it's almost like we're finding the gold inside ourselves to actually deliver to the world.
Yeah, and I think these traditional professions, like don't forget the medical profession as well. They got the same thing too. I think there's that profession is a concrete vault with 20-foot wide thick walls, and it's only so big. I think that those industries only makes it so big for growth and opportunity. Most hit the walls in the ceiling and they're good and they can stay in that vault. But I thought that was repressing to the point where that concrete box was closing in on me. That's how it felt. And I had to break free. And I think for that, you have to be transformational to get out of that traditional. Like it's everything was structured. There's only so much you can do that you can have to do it this way to get here with being, for you to be recognized as an expert, you have to have all these letters. You have to do all this stuff. And if you do it differently, therefore, you're not good. You're a renegade. You're a cowboy. You're dangerous.
Oh, you were a problem in the engineering space just as
I,
much as I was a pain in the ass to accountants. Like
I
my
still
partners
am.
got, yeah,
Yeah.
it's still, yeah, we still are in our own respective ways. The thing that I wanted to go down into with you on this podcast is for the listeners is going through this transformation of working in an area that we thought was our job and our career, and that's what was going to happen. And now all of a sudden it's broken through into this new area of transformation. So first of all, I kind of wanted to highlight that point for you that I see
Yeah.
it happening everywhere. So I think
Yeah.
there's a bigger picture and there's a bigger topic we could talk about on there, but I specifically wanted to get down into your brain. Believe it or not, I actually want to get inside your head there. Which is a dangerous place, which you've said multiple times. That what got you curious to go into these areas? Because you're like the ultimate explorer, dude. Like when it came to the ADHD, and you've gone so deep into this area and understand it so well. And I've talked to multiple people who've gone through your ADHD program, and they've like been completely transformed. They're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong with me. I just need to know how to work with the way my brain works. Right. And here in the Viking Academy, that's what I'm trying to get people to do is explore their mind, their body, and their spirit. And when we're talking about exploring the mind, you've done that in an incredible way. What spurred you to do that?
Well, you mentioned it was like when you're an engineer and accountant, it was a job. I forget the next word. But I think long term, it became our identity. You're an accountant. I'm an engineer. And I think I'm going to speak from my experiences. My battle was I knew I wasn't a typical engineer. That was problematic. Am I bad? Am I not good? And then when I got the diagnosis, it just opened up a whole different realm of now understanding why I was different. And the challenge to go from the engineer to this new direction, which I've always known was the right way to go. It was where I'm going to be the happiest to help people. Because of my training as an engineer, I was able to analyze and analytically look at everything. So I got that training, but it's separating myself from the identity of an engineer to becoming this new person that's going to help ADHD entrepreneurs understand themselves. And is there some embarrassment tied to that, or some shame because I didn't live up to expectations? But to whose expectations? That's my transitional challenge. And then only for this to work, you need to have a transformational goal. And the past is hard to shake, it seems.
You've brought up a point there that is starting to connect the dots for me on multiple podcasts now, is this conditioned response, like that we've conditioned ourselves to be a certain way. And the freedom comes in breaking free from those conditionings. But you first have to see that you are conditioned. And like the fact that you're self-aware to go, hey, I feel ashamed for this, that, the other thing. It's a conditioning that has just been placed upon me and you carry it. But as soon as you start breaking through it, you start feeling the freedom of being yourself. But you can only do that if you actually start exploring it and going deeper, like face the dragon, right? Go and face the dragon.
Your dragon. Yeah. Or in my case was little Andre, because there's a lot of trauma or past trauma or addiction that gets brought in.
The past trauma and the conditioning that we've all had.
Conditioning.
And there's an interesting thing when it comes to trauma. Like I got to tell you the truth here. Normally when I hear people, it's like, oh, I have trauma. I'm like, oh my God, I've had enough of this. Like, and then all of a sudden I looked and I went, oh, I have a bunch of that too. Like it's, it's ironic that the person that goes, everybody's whining about trauma. Actually, we all have trauma at different levels. Like there's different levels of trauma. Like we're talking a kid that's grown up in a very abusive home and beaten, or they're living in a war-torn area. I mean, that's serious trauma, but we all have traumas in different levels, and they all condition our personalities, which we start to realize as we get older that actually I'm just working out a pattern that's a condition based on this trauma that I had in my past. And it sounds like you've unlocked that in your journey.
And that's what your brain does, is creates patterns of behavior to protect yourself from those times back when, and that becomes ingrained. That's your programming, right? Your operating system. And then you just got to say, hey, I'm not there anymore. I'm safe. That's the big one. But now remember what I was going to say, when you're talking about the conformity part, okay, just even if you don't have ADHD or neurodivergent, just being in a traditional world of professionals and you're the oddball profession, you have to fit in, right? So if you want to follow the crowd and not stick out, you kind of fit in. And with my ADHD and autism, I realized I changed the way I behaved and who I was so I can fit in. Then after 40 years of basically I'm playing a character. And after 40 years, I became really damn good at playing this character that I didn't realize it was a character until I got the diagnosis and started to see ADHD was a brain thing. It's not a moral failure. And then the next part of the transition is, all right, is this goal or this opinion the old character or the true Andre? And that's confusing as hell, man. So a lot of us get caught in becoming a character and then we lose ourselves in it.
That is a really massive point when it comes to my life. And I look back on it and think, how much of this is really me? How much is the real Eric? And how much of it is just trying to fit in? When you look at the brain, and we've had lots of conversations about this, is we're working on an old operating system. Like our reptilian brain is still in charge, and the need to fit in socially with people and changing the way you behave, because that's what herd animals do in the Serengeti, right? Like a herd animal if you stray from the herd, the cheetah is going to get you. It's going to come and jump on you, right? So that's why we have this natural tendency to herd and to be social creatures and conform. But I see it more and more happening that people are starting to break free. Especially the kids these days, like my daughter and their friends, they don't want to conform at all. Like they're waking up earlier and earlier that conforming is conditioning who they actually are, and they're getting away from it before we do. And I look at it and I'll go, my daughter's way more self-aware than I ever was at 40. And she's 12.
But that has a lot to do with you. You're a self-aware gentleman and you live it, right? And I think that bleeds out into our kids, because my kids are the same way. They're not self-aware and there's anti-conformity. As long as you're not extremely rude, you have the right to challenge or question authority or someone who's trying to push you around. But I think it has a lot to do with you and your wife too. That's making her that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's no instinct in her, but
yeah, and it's not anti-conformity in terms of I'm gonna fight the establishment. It's like, no, realizing, and that's coming back to your point. When am I stopping to conform because it's who I am versus conforming because it is who I am, Mike. So being part of the crowd maybe is you because that's what you want to be. But then there's another time when it's not, and you don't realize subconsciously, and this is the thing, is this conditioning. You're like, I'm just behaving like this, but am I doing that out of past conditioning? And is it really the expression I want to have? Or am I just doing it out of fear because my lizard brain's trying to keep me in the herd and not get eaten by a fucking cheetah?
Right. And the whole purpose of the brain is to protect you. That's it. It doesn't know what the negative or positive outcomes on whatever system it creates to protect you. That's why you'll react to different people. You got threatened. Your brain's going to say, we had something similar in the past, so therefore you need to do this or run away, right? The brain doesn't know. It doesn't do the cognitive thinking of it, so it reacts. Its sole purpose is to keep you in the comfort zone that you're comfortable with now. And then if you stray too far, it'll create self-talk or reactions for you to be safe. That's the only purpose. And when I learned that made so much clarity on like a lot of your triggers. Look at it. It's there to protect you. That reaction is a protection mechanism, but not from today. Something from the past.
So how does that safety mechanism work inside the ADHD brain? Like how ADHD is obviously, is that also a protection mechanism?
No, ADHD is just a different wiring of the brain. Like the prefrontal cortex, that's the filter. You got an impulsive thought, you got an impulsive reaction. The prefrontal cortex kind of says, hey, let's think about this. Should you do A, B, C, and D? No, A is your best route. Go for it. So when people say, Andre, you don't have a filter, it's actually neurologically true. My filter is not really there. So it just comes out. Then my brain catches up going, whoa, that maybe we should not have, right? So that's one of the things. So the brain inhibits differently than everyone else. The other thing too ADHD has is a time frame difference. So it's either now or not now. If it's not now, I really don't care. I don't see it important. And our time horizon is very, very short. So time horizon is how far in the future can you see and keep yourself organized and plan? I'm a week, maybe 2. That's why I realized I always like small, quick projects, because any long-term construction projects are months up to a year, and I lose track of that. And I just subconsciously knew that this other stuff was funner, in and out, done. So it's now or not now. That was a big eye opener for me. And then the third thing is, and it's an executive functioning difference. So how you plan, organize, prioritize yourself and organize yourself. That's all executive functions. And then one thing that's really effective with the ADHD brain is our working memory. So how many things can you hold in your head without forgetting? Most people, it's 7 to 10. That's why your phone numbers are 7 to 10 digits. I think I figured I'm about 3. So if you put marbles on a shelf, If you put 4 marbles on the shelf, then you put a fifth one falls off the shelf. Well, that one's gone forever now. I will not remember. It's not that I don't care to remember, I'm stupid. It's just my brain can't hold that much in the short term. That's why I was always writing stuff down. I was always having journals, logbooks. I didn't realize that's so I wouldn't forget. So that it's just how the brain works differently.
So here's a question that I want to dive into with you. Just recently, Erin, my wife, she went in and did the assessment. Okay. So because she was having some problems and she was really quite curious. And so the assessment came out and she obviously gave me permission to share this with everybody on the podcast, you. And it came out that she has mild ADHD. And she's like, when she read the report, she was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense now. Like as the report was explaining all these different facets of it. And she was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense now. What I'm finding though, and what I'm hearing is that there's so many people with ADHD that are undiagnosed or they're becoming diagnosed, but it seems to be way more prevalent today than it ever was back when I was growing up in the 70s. Like what's been your research on that?
The stigma is changing. That's not as bad as it was. Like when I first got that diagnosis, I thought it was like a death sentence. I got a problem, but that was our training. So it's getting more accepted of a difference. It's being more let's say it's being noticed more. I wouldn't say accepted. It's noticed more. And with COVID, everyone started having the ADHD trait-like symptoms because we're all locked in our house. We're all doing stuff and we're not supposed to. Anxiety, depression, everything went on the rise. And therefore, everyone just started getting diagnoses of ADHD. So because of the awareness and the stigma change, we're getting more. Well, it actually has a lot to do with the fact that adult ADHD is more accepted as a challenge in the medical world, as before it was just kids only. You grew out of it as an adult. So that's about 10 years that adult ADHD is a thing in the medical world. So there's not a lot of people that know it in the field. But now it's actually, I think it's overdiagnosed right now. Actually, I just finished having a chat with a doctor, a neuropsychologist who specializes in ADHD, and she had it on her podcast, and I invited her on mine to talk more about this, was about how people are misunderstanding because the symptoms are overlapping and you might be going down the wrong trail of treatment, and to stop using social media as your diagnosis tool.
Yeah, that's a dangerous one. Yeah. Well, I think I have this. Go check it out on social media. Well, then I actually have every disease known to humankind.
Yeah, every letter. So her point was, the whole point with the social media is you feel like a part of a community, right? So that's the other enticing part of it as well. But the thing you just read was she has mild ADHD, right?
Yes.
So
ADHD it says mild.
is a spectrum. There is a spectrum. So either you have it mild or severe, because it really depends on how much it affects your day-to-day life daily. So like for me, it's constant. It's 100% constant. And I don't like using the term symptom. It's just, I'm trying to work in a world that's not wired for me. That's where the symptoms come out. Right. And while some, if they're on the milder side, then they're, it's not as prevalent, but it's there if it starts to bank up or doing certain things. Remember, ADHD is an interest-based nervous system. The rest of the world is importance-based. So if it's important to you or to your spouse, you will have the motivation to do something, even if you hate it, because it's important to them. My brain doesn't see it that way. I understand it's important for you, Eric, that I'm on this podcast, but I'm here to be nice. Okay, I'll probably be a rigid bore. But actually, I'm really interested. I know this is going to go in different novel ways. Now that's how my brain is now fired up. I can be focused. So I need it to be novel, interesting, challenging, passion-driven, and urgent. That's why sometimes we leave everything we don't want to do at the last minute, because our brain fires up and we can get through shitty hell and just get the crap stuff done.
A couple things I want to ask you on this is, first of all, where should someone go if they think they have ADHD? Actually, I'm going to do the question before that one was, what are some of the telltale signs that you might have noticed now looking back going, hey, I noticed this, this, and this. If you notice this, this, and this, you may want to consider it. And then step 2 is, where should they go to get assessed? And then number 3 is, what do you do once you get the assessment? Because I think that's the thing that I'm really interested in sharing with the listeners, is what you've done with the third part.
Yeah, you need to remember those questions because I won't.
Okay,
So
first one is what? Yeah, right. Hey, that was only 3, dude. I was listening. Okay, I didn't give you 4. I didn't give you 5.
Already gone trying to answer them.
3 of them. All right. So, first one is, what were the signs that you had ADHD? If you look back on it, what would someone see as signs?
The one was always forgetting things that people told me, and starting to have to write everything down. That was one of my big ones. A long time ago, I created these little routines so I wouldn't forget stuff, because I was tired of forgetting, like in high school, like my pencil case or this book, because everything's all over the place. When I'm done, I stop, I move over. So I start organizing things in a certain way that I can reduce my mental energy load in the morning. So always keeping, as silly as it is, my clothes are all picked up the next morning. Why? So I just get up I don't have to make any decisions. The constant thing is, if you're achieving the results that are asked, but then you're still getting shit because how you did it was wrong, but you still got the right answer, that's a good sign if it's a constant thing. Because I always got in trouble for how I did it. I got it right. I got the project done. We saved the money you want, but I'm going to shit on you because you just did everything wrong, non-linearly. You didn't follow the book. You didn't blah, 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 blah.
That sounds like the accounting profession, man. You'd always get in trouble for doing the file the wrong way, but you'd get to the right answer. And you and I talked about this before, because I wasn't sure if I had ADHD, and we've worked out that I don't. But it's
just a screaming quick start.
Yes, I would come at it from a different angle. So for number 1 is if you're forgetting things. Number 2 is if you get in shit for doing things differently, but still having the proper result. It's different if you just did things differently and it screwed it up and you didn't get the right result. But if you're getting the right result, but you're still getting in trouble for doing it differently. Okay, got that.
Yeah, and coming up with unique solutions that no one understands and they give you a hard time is another one I got. I'm like, this is all not just in the engineering world. I can all come back with relations to as a child. When you're bored, you're really not paying attention to stuff, or focusing to focus. That's another one, right? I'm working hard to focus, and that burns a lot of mental energy. And if you're not interested, it's very hard to do anything. Getting hurt a lot doesn't mean you have to visit the hospital all the time. I discovered with time, because one of the things is, are you prone to hurting yourself and do hospital visits? And I'm like, oh, no. I've only been in the hospital twice in my life when I started looking at this. But if I look at it, the amount of injuries on my left side of the body, on every ligament, on every knuckle, of every joint. Yeah, I was getting hurt a lot. Now, why are you getting hurt? You're pushing too hard, or all of a sudden you're in la land thinking of something else, and all of a sudden, the walls and doors always jump in front of me every time. Right? But that just means my attention is somewhere else. And, another big one I got was scanning. Are you accused of always catching stuff that's not relevant to a conversation or in a room? You go in a room, you see everything. And that's because you're constantly scanning. Because the other analogy I like is you're a hunter in a farmer's world. So in the old days, you were protecting and feeding the tribe. The farmers were there taking care of everything day to day. The ADHD brain was out hunting, crawling, hyper focus, drown out the world. A grass twitches, you look. You have to instinctively, impulsively react, let it go or jump. So now in today's world, that grass still twitches, I look. You're not paying attention.
Social media must be a complete nightmare for you then.
That's why I don't look at it.
Everything twitches and moves and bumps and jumps.
Yeah.
Do you think, and again, we're not medical professionals, people, I want you to all understand this, but do you think that that social media is increasing the
distractibility?
Yeah. Is it increasing ADHD by the fact that it actually makes it so much worse? Or do you think it's actually causing ADHD? That's like the bigger question.
No, it's not causing ADHD. It's a brain thing that you're born with, or
Okay.
you got some big traumatic event, or some early lead poisoning or heavy metals poisoning. Again, but that because it changes the dynamics of the brain structure.
Okay.
Social media is actually it makes it doesn't make it worse or cause ADHD. It's just another rabbit hole to fall down. So gaming gaming is a bad one because it's all about the quick dopamine hit. So the ADHD brain has a challenge using dopamine properly or creating enough. That's why it's hard to focus and get the dopamine. And scrolling social media, playing games, that's just a constant dopamine hit that we need. We don't have enough and we want more. Like for me, I was fat as a kid because I ate 2 or 3 loaves of white bread a day. I loved the bread, but that was actually a dopamine hit for my brain with the simple carbs. It gave me a jolt, right? So I got addicted to bread because it was feeding my dopamine, lack of dopamine. So the social media is one of those traits going down. I remember in university, that's when Doom first came out. So I got on the floor, had Doom and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like playing. Then I realized I did bad on a couple of exams. Then one night I realized the guy whose dorm room we were in playing the game wasn't my room, it was his. He's passed out with his roommate. It was acceptable for anyone on the floor to play whenever we want. And I was playing for 8 hours straight. And I said, oh my God, games are addictive. I don't want to go there. So I cut games out 100%. So when World of Warcraft came online, because I got hooked on that too, I'm like, I made a conscious decision to never do any online games because I knew I get sucked in because of that dopamine hit. So you get into those traps, it would have been something in the old days, racing race cars or your bikes down a steep hill, right? But no, to answer your question, social media, it aggravates it because it's easy to get to. And the problem is with social media, they're targeting you to get that quick dopamine fix, which long-term is not healthy anyways, no matter what kind of brain structure you are.
True that. You and I talked about that on your podcast when I was in Perth about the dopamine hit that the alcoholic gets by chasing the high and all the rest of that. I don't want to go down that road right now, but it's the dopamine. Well, let's talk about Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan, our coach from Strategic Coach, he has ADHD, but he's found a way to use a tool instead of using medication, using his impact quick filter to actually give him that little dopamine hit to help him focus. And I think we're kind of jumping to the third part of the question. I just want to go to the second one. So let's carve this off. One is here's kind of some of the things that you notice now looking back. That was signs of ADHD. Number two is
before you go to number two, the other thing is when you hear people talking about their ADHD or you read something about ADHD and you go, holy shit, most likely. If you go, well, depends on the situation, not too sure, most likely not. So by listening to people's actual stories, or especially if you're reading a good book and you're like, holy crap, this is me, that's a good sign as well.
Okay, cool. So then number two is like and I think this is a bit of a trap. If you do have these signs or symptoms, what would your recommendation be? Should they go and get tested to see if they do have it? And where would you go to get tested? Like I know Erin went to this, we went through Mind Key Health and she got tested by a proper professional.
Yeah. So the best route is psychologist. They have they can prescribe medication, which is helpful, but you got to make sure that they have experience with adult ADHD. You can get some therapists and all that. They can point you in the right direction, but ultimately the best route is a medical professional giving you the diagnosis. Like you got different places. I'm not familiar with what you're referring to there. Like there's even some medical doctors, they're actually diagnosing ADHD because they actually went the extra work, and there's a couple places that it's supervised by a medical doctor, but he's got she's got a specialty in adult ADHD. But that's the key. Because the one thing actually talking with Dr. Judy Ho today was try not to go to the doctor saying, I want a diagnosis of ADHD or autism. just go and say, I think I'm having challenges. Here are my list of symptoms. Then follow the process, because they're so overlapping. A lot of the symptoms are overlapping with others. Then they're going to start trying to figure out and take things off the table. And that's the proper route. So if it's depression, you're going to be treated for ADHD, you're still going to have a problem. Or if it's anxiety, or if it's borderline personality, bipolar. So you want to chase the right diagnosis, because the other diagnosis, if you remove that condition, then you won't have the symptoms again, or you won't have them at the time. So that's not ADHD. If you treat, because coexisting anxiety and depression, bipolar is common with ADHD, I think that has more to do with society than an actual condition of it. So they coexist, and you treat the depression, anxiety, and the symptoms are still there. Now you got a little more proof that it's an ADHD brain.
Right. And so that's good, because I think that's where my thinking was going on that when I was setting up question 2 is like, where should you go to get diagnosed for ADHD? I didn't want to set the stage for someone to go, because it's like your mind will make it up that says, oh, I have ADHD, I should go check on that. So that was a fantastic point. Just if you're having troubles, take your list of symptoms, give it to a professional, and have them deal with it. So here, let's go to the third part, which is, I want you to share a little bit around this, is that, and I don't want to go down any kind of controversy or anything like that, but I see more and more little kids and people getting medicated all the time, tons of pharmaceuticals, just boom, 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 boom. But you have created a program for the ADHD entrepreneur, which obviously has nothing, no drugs in it. You're not a pharmacist. You're not a psychiatrist. You don't do any of that, but you have found some incredible coaching and thinking tools to help people deal with and integrate their ADHD into who they are. I want you to share some of that. I want you to share a little bit of that, because that, I think, is really important, that I want people to understand, is that I think we have I know we have a fucking problem just taking a pill. We have a problem, we pop a pill. We have this, we take a pill. We want an instant.
It's a crutch, and don't want to do I don't want to do the work to do it.
Yeah. Now, that's not saying that some people some people, it's extreme cases. Yes, you do need that. But I don't want to necessarily bash the people that have to really take medication, but I want to highlight the fact that there's behavior modifications, thinking tools, stuff like Dan Sullivan has come up with his quick filter. He says he reads his quick filter and boom, he gets his hit, and now he can go and do what he needs to do. Right.
Well, yeah, it gets what he's thinking out of his head. So ADHD brain has a hard time processing information until it comes out to come back in. So that's a part of that, is he gets it out on paper, so he sees it differently. And if he buys into it, now he's got a reminder of what to do and doesn't have to try to remember.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And then with that part, he takes 5 of those success criteria that matches one of each of his Clifton strengths. So he's always interested. So he did a little cheat there, a little trick.
So he takes the idea out of his head because it's spinning around with so many ideas. He puts it on paper, so then he can actually see the idea clearly. Then when he looks at the success criteria, he goes, okay, which one of those things that need to happen fits my unique ability so I will constantly be fascinated and motivated. So I will actually get those things done. Here's a couple other things that need to get done for this task to happen. I'm not doing those because if I don't, I got to give them to somebody else to do, because I will never get through it.
Yeah. So he kind of found a shortcut to trick his brain to be motivated, but it's a lot, but it's done. He intentionally created something for his brain to activate. So it's interesting, it's novel to him all the time, but it's a tool that he makes sure it suits his unique ability and that interest-based nervous system.
Wow.
So just to go about that, the only thing I want to talk about meds is I'm not on medication. I tried. My kids are on them. I think here's the other unfortunate thing. ADHD is diagnosed usually because it's a problem for someone else, not necessarily the person, or how it affects other people. So with that, the medication is also used to normalize, and the coaching methods for ADHD is how to normalize yourself to fit in with society. And that's always been a problem for me. Okay. So that's why I started the program, because I was really pissed off that, no, you're just putting lipstick on a pig here. You're still trying to normalize them, but on a happy, gory, woo time, superpowers. Let's go, girls. Let's go, boys. Like, and that just drove me nuts because we're not doing the real work. So the medication, when I got diagnosed, it was a shitstorm. I call it my life tempest, losing my company. I think a lot of the past trauma would have been working on the last couple of years. That all came to a head. I was ultimately triggered by the world. It was a shit show. So at that time, I needed medication to slow the world down so I can process stuff, right? And sometimes people need that. Right now, if the kid has ADHD and is struggling to keep up in that systematic bullshit school system, like my oldest, it gets her to focus more and kind of normalize. She can get through school easier, but she's not using it every day when she's on holidays. So at times you need it. Ultimately, my personal feeling is it's a crutch. If you need it to, I need to have a pill so I can do work. Well, I don't like that. I was never one for, hacks, because you got to do real work, especially in this mental health stuff. If you're working on your mental health, it takes hard work. Like you told me, drinking is not a drinking problem. It's a thinking problem. But to think it out, you got to go somewhere your body was using alcohol to stay away from. So it's not easy, right? Or pop an anxiety pill and life will be better. But we're not going to deal with the actual issue that's anxiety. So that's the only problem I have. So it's useful at times. I don't think it's necessary. So with the program, what I have is the coaching out there is how you can fit in more. And my program is all about how I understand you, the unique Eric, your unique ADHD, and how you can encompass and understand that the brain's just wired differently. I remember one episode, I've been told this sucks. I shouldn't do this. We have to do it that way. And I'm like, why? This is how you work well, is this way. It's just no one seems to get it. So instead of saying, and I don't I like labels for you to get an understanding so you can work on something. So ADHD label, I have ADHD, that was me understanding, and it was my explanation of the challenges I had. So I actually give people vocabulary to explain what their needs are and how they work without using the labels. Because if I come to you, because of my ADHD, I can't do shit. What's your automatic response? Lazy, stupid, what the hell, dude? Like, now you're using that. So it'd be like, well, okay, since I can't remember too many things at once, do you mind emailing me what you just requested me? Because I know I'm going to forget when I go.
Right. So you're working, I really like that. So you're working with the condition that you have, but saying, I understand it. It's self-awareness really is what we're talking about. Is a complete self-awareness of going, I can't remember more than 4 things. I like the marble analogy, like on the shelf. I really like that. So it's like you've got 3 marbles up there. If you put another one, it's going to drop off. So can you help and work with me so that we can work with my 3 marble system so that I can still get the job done? Because I want to get the job done. It's just, I can't remember more than 3 marbles at a time.
Yeah. But without having to say I'm not remembering 2 things. Right. That's the kind of vocabulary, right? Yeah. Hey, can we meet in a month? I'm going to say yes, because my time horizon's that's like 100 years from now. We'll make it work. Now I got to say, well, you know what? You should talk to Sarah because she can fit in my system. Because by the time I get there, it'll be like, we're supposed to meet and my calendar's full. Sure. So to make sure I got the time for you, you need to talk to Sarah so that we can have the appropriate time. That's the kind of stuff I think is more important. And it's just a brain wiring difference, right? And the thing is, too, is you just, the impulsivity part, it comes out. The ADHD brain feels emotions 1,000 times more than anyone else, right? It's intense. It's raw. It's immediate. And then since you have no prefrontal cortex filter, it comes out immediately. But when it gets to that stage, I started observing myself for a while. When I started my first company, I said, there's a bunch of behaviors that happen I didn't realize they were triggers. I just called them triggers at the time. I didn't want to repeat those behaviors. So what happened? I'd look back, but I started going, okay, that triggered it. But like, yeah, but I don't think him just saying that, if it was a nice day, that wouldn't have bothered me. So what the hell happened? So I kept tracing back the trigger that triggered the trigger, kept going back and back and back and back to an event or something that just started to spiral. And I started seeing a pattern. So to control my emotional regulation and my impulsive outbursts, I start looking for these early warning signs. I'm in the middle of focus time, or, I woke up this morning is a good one. I woke up, now I had to bring the kids to the doctor's appointment because my wife's got too many orders in the bakery. Not a big deal, but that derailed my day. I'm going to be late. I can't get everything I got done. Now that's an early warning. I might explode on my team or on someone that comes in that interrupts me unannounced. So since I know that this is the start of a potential path, what can I do to change that, or just be aware that it could be? And then now you can start catching yourself a little bit before you train your body. You actually can train your brain to know that these are early warning systems. And it's in a way you're managing the impulsivity.
That is so cool, because you're unwinding, you're stopping the conditioned being. Like when you do things that are just conditioned, but it's always over a time horizon, you're getting at the front end of the time horizon and going, oh, here's this first thing that happens. And I know that when that thing happens and it ties into the next, then when I blow up in the future, it's a result of my conditioning, my past conditioning. So you have to be completely present. You have to be very present to be going, oh, this is happening now, recognizing it in the present moment and going, having the ability to go, I recognize that thing can compound itself to cause a problem in the future.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's either now or not now focus.
That's the time frame.
The time frame, not now. But what you're doing is you're staying in the now and you're going, it's a now thing, but that now thing is going to impact me later. So it is not a now thing. It's a now thing and not a now thing, but you're recognizing it.
And that's a growth mindset. Because if I had the victim mindset like I was raised to be, and like I had for a while, that's slight. I'd be the victim. Therefore, they deserve it. And I'm not going to try to bypass it because I just got slighted. I'm going to take it to the end. Fuck the man. Fuck the system. Right. But now it's just like, once I got the shift from victim to growth, it's just like, whoa, let's think about this. I got two paths here, hell or to the left of hell.
The conditioning that you pick up and that's going to happen in the future. There's a saying in the recovery movement called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, HALT. That's going to watch out for that, because that's the beginning of that train of conditioning that you're talking about, right? You can't, don't go there, right? Just don't go there.
And then with my therapist last night, she's actually going, it's kind of cool because you're actually catching these little reactions and then you're curious on why it was triggered.
And that's the explorer, right? That's being curious and exploring and looking at the dark areas, which is why I love what you're doing with the ADHD entrepreneur. There's multiple levels to it. One is that you've been an avid explorer of yourself and you've gone and looked at the shadow side and you've gone into the dark areas. You've grabbed your sword, right? I'm going to go to battle with myself, for myself, right? I'm going to go and find out what those things are. So you've done that. You've also realized that who you are, who a lot of us are, is a result of all this combined conditioning responses. And you're starting to cut them away and see them in real time and going, that's going to cause a problem in the future. So that self-awareness is there. And the third thing that is just really beautiful is that you are showing people that to completely accept who they are, but work with it. Don't try and stuff it or conform yourself to the crowd. It's like, no, this is the way you work. This is the way you operate. And from my perspective, I think the universe never makes a mistake, ever. I don't think the creator's ever made a mistake. You are the way you are because that's who you were supposed to be, because that's who you are. And so once you
Yeah.
start accepting that and then working with that, that's when the excitement and the expansion and the passion starts kicking in, because you're not beating yourself up for who you are. You're working with what you've been given, and life becomes joyful. So I love what you're doing, man.
Thank you. Yeah. And then right now I'm starting to toy with a couple podcast discussions and clients, and the personal rules that you have, I must, if every time I commit, if I say I'm going to do it, I got to go do it no matter what. I can't delegate it. It's these types of personal rules or values, even if you know it's a stupid idea, or you're going to, halfway through it's a waste of time and you must finish. Why? So I'm starting to question people. Why is that a rule? It's a great trait, but why is it a rule? Because I made it for me. I don't think you made it for yourself. Something happened to do something. So in my case was I had to do it. If not, I got ridiculed horribly as a kid, publicly. Or you're trying to impress someone. And who is that someone? So I'm starting to look at these personal rules as if they're not helping you, there's another subconscious thing requiring it because of something that happened in the past, even though you've convinced yourself it's for the betterment of you, or I made the rule, but it wasn't. Your brain created the system to protect you at the time or to get recognition, and it just became innate.
Right. I see where you're going with this, and I can pick up the ethos of it, and you just haven't been able to quite formulate the point. I hear what you're saying. So I'm going to be very interested in seeing where you go on that one, because that is still tying into questioning the conditioning that you are acting out today. Some of these things that we're acting out today, and that were our behaviors that we're acting out today, you're saying, hey, you may think that's a really good, noble trait or a virtue, but if you really look at it a little closer, is it really helping you, or is it hurting you, or is it helping others, or is it harming others?
Right.
And then once you say, if it's not helping you, or if it's not helping others, go back in your past and keep digging and explore and figure out what caused you to believe that in the first place. What did your brain do to create the structure, the mental structure, to say this was a must do?
Yeah. And it's not, they would say we get rid of the rule. It's just, I think now you can assess your life better. Yeah. Yes, I committed to it, but it's a waste of time. Therefore, I can stop now because you're aware of that versus that ultimate black and white rule. Like for me, this is one of the big ones I got. Like success, I need to feel pain. It has to be hard to be successful. I cannot just, everything's going well and accept it. Why? Kept going back. Well, I always hurt myself when I'm doing physical labor, or if I work, I go until I physically can't do it anymore. That's just the way I've been rolling for 40 years. And why is that? Because that was the only way I can get out of working from my dad, is if I was hurt. I could not stop the job until it was completely done, or I actually got hurt. So the way I could see it, and that's how it transformed into success has to be painful. Success was acknowledgement.
That's an interesting insight, because we've talked about this quite a bit in terms of, why does it have to hurt? Why does it have to work hard? That phrase, work hard. I'm like, I'm going to work. It doesn't have to work hard, but I'm going to work intensely. I'm going to put a lot of intensity into it, or I'm going to put a lot of focus in on it, or I'm going to do, I'm going to strengthen and test my muscles out, mental and physical. But why does it have to be hard? That is really interesting that you've tied that all the way back to actually a way for you to get out of working with your dad.
Yeah. Like, and the elephant's your body, right? The monkey elephant scenario. Like the elephant's your body, and that reacts instinctively. So it doesn't think. So whatever your hardwiring is, you react instinctively to protect yourself. And that's what I do with my program is I'm trying to train that elephant to start seeing things differently and not to be a threat all the time. Because I think a lot of the ADHD challenges we have is not how we do things and the way our brain's wired. It's how society has been telling us you suck all this time and you're not doing it well. The only way to succeed is by memorizing. That's why I stayed away from biology. I had to memorize everything. I just knew instinctively that I was going to fail. But if I can write out formulas in physics and chemistry, I understood how the theories work, and I can write it out and make it practical, that was fine for me. But society is saying you must know to memorize, right? Tests in school is your test, your ability to memorize, not actually understand the shit. Look at all the engineers I'm running into every day. They get high marks in school, they got their PhD, but they still can't design a goddamn beam to save their life.
Or the lives of the other people that they're designing the beam to save.
But I got high marks, therefore I must be great. Well, you don't understand what you're doing. You just do what you memorized.
Where can people find you and your podcast and your course if they are interested in exploring this more?
Simply theimpulsivethinker.com. You can find the podcast there. Podcast is called The Impulsive Thinker. It's on all platforms, but it's also on the website and on my YouTube channel at The Impulsive Thinker. In the website, there's information on the program, but I like talking to the people to see what pain points they have and see if the program's good for them or not. But all the information's there in my email.
As I said, brother, I really love what you're doing. And I'm going to say it again, like I've said it for the last few years. This is what you need to be doing all the time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And for you too. This is I like your new medium here, the Viking Academy. You're glowing, my friend.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, brother. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks again for listening to me.
Thanks for listening to the Viking Academy podcast. Make sure to leave us your honest feedback by leaving a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.